let's talk about how I learned to stop hating myself. To be clear, I'm still super new to it. I can't even remember how long ago it began that I just had like a deep self-loathing. It feels like I was born with it. And I recently have learned how to stop hating myself. And I feel like this is something that a lot of people can relate to. It's the laundry. And I wanted to talk about it. I just wanted to give you some tips basically for like how you can stop hating yourself. And you might not even know that you do. You might not even realize that you are constantly judging yourself in a negative way or punishing yourself. So I kind of wanted to talk about my experience, maybe to like wake up a little bit of something in you, like up here. If you're just like if completely oblivious to the fact that you don't even like yourself very much and that you need to let go of that. First, this is water. I just did my skincare. Just a little, daily skincare, a little vitamin C serum. And I don't know why these are still in my head, but I kind of like the way they look. This is how I pin my hair up when I do my skincare in the morning. Also, my hair's not greasy. I just washed it. But when my roots grow out, girl, you know what I mean? Anyway, I think I always knew that I was like pretty difficult. Well, I don't know if I always knew it, but upon reflection, I would say that I'm a relatively introspective person. Upon reflection, probably before this, but I think I started to realize it a little bit more in the year of 2020, which was a very formative year for most of us. I started to do a lot of self-reflection about into why I am the way that I am, certain things that I experienced growing up and how they've really solidified my negativity around not just myself, but very much myself, other people and other things going on. I started to really become aware of where those things came from, which was very useful. I think pinpointing where certain traits come from or may not come from but are solidified is very important. Self-introspection is so redundant. Introspection is incredibly important, and that's not to say that it can't be overdone. Fast forward, I went into CBT therapy, went pretty nice for 4 months. The next 4 months didn't go so great. I started to feel really worse. I started to feel really worse, and then I decided to pursue OCD, therapy for OCD, which is where a lot of these realizations about punishment, self-punishment, and my negativity toward myself really, really became apparent. And I started to actually take active measures towards, I was going to say reversing them. It's not even really reversing them, because if you are someone who can relate to hating yourself or judgment, like an extremely negative judgment of yourself, self-punishment, it's not like the goal is to get to a point where you're like, I am the baddest bitch in the world, okay? I can do no wrong. I'm amazing. Like, I love myself so much. That is not the goal. That's not the goal, okay? At least in my humble opinion, I don't think that that is necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think it's a good thing to feel that sometimes and to help encourage that in other people as well. Because, if you're not gonna like prop yourself up, who is? There's a lot of people out there who don't have someone to do that for themselves. For them. Before we get into how to break some of these habits, I wanted to talk about some of the habits, a little bit about how they manifested in me specifically. So obviously I have OCD and I've been pursuing, treatment for that. A lot of the self-judgment and hatred would come from feeling like I'm not doing enough or I'm doing things wrong. To put it very plainly, it's pretty layered, and I would highly recommend, if you do have OCD, I will link the workbook that you can do at home yourself down below, which has been really helpful for me supplementarily to my OCD therapy. If you are unable to afford OCD therapy, if you don't have insurance, or if it doesn't accept your insurance, whatever. Full disclosure, I am doing it through NoCD. This isn't sponsored. Some examples for me have been, for instance, one of the first that I really recognized was wellness journals. I got so into wellness journals. Oh my God, I got so into wellness journals like a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And it was like I had to fill it out the right way, okay? Or else I was doing it wrong. And I would create these arbitrary rules about how I would have to fill them out. So like for instance, one of the pages would be like how much, like how many hours of sleep did you get? And they have these little like crescent moon illustrations that are just outlines that you can fill in. I had to fill them in perfectly. I couldn't go out of the lines. If I went outside of the lines, it was just like it would add to the list. It was like a star system. It was like a star was removed, and now I'm worse. I'm doing worse. Okay, it's like one strike basically. There was a whole page on the other side where you could write down your thoughts, and if I didn't fill that page out or like fully, like if I did not fill that page, once again, that's another strike, maybe a few strikes, because that felt like the end of the world to me. If I had a sink full of dishes and I didn't do them, huge strike, multiple strikes, so many strikes, 25 strikes, okay? So many strikes. And all of these strikes throughout the day based on like, maybe I had a plan to do a lower body workout and I skipped one of the exercises that I had planned because I was tired or I was just dreading it or something. All of these strikes, all of these things are strikes against me as a person and what I'm trying to accomplish, which in my opinion was not enough. No matter what I did, it was never enough. And I would just spiral and I would punish myself. And it was mostly like a mental punishment, just like thinking I don't deserve good things. I don't deserve to like wear the nice outfit. I don't deserve to wear the nice clothes. I have to save these things for when I'm doing it right. When I'm doing it right. Which obviously never fucking happened. Probably like 2 years ago, I reached a point where I had reached the pinnacle, okay? In my opinion, I was eating perfectly, I was eating clean, and I was exercising like with weights 5 times a week, and I was like doing yoga, and I was going for walks, and physically I felt really good, and all my clothes looked amazing, and I was feeling good. I had like a lot of energy and stuff. As soon as I reached that point, I think it probably lasted like a month or two. And then I just crashed. I stopped working out. I just wanted to like binge junk food. Like I couldn't, and it felt completely out of my control. And it was within those 2 months, even when I was in that place where I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, I was constantly in fear of losing it. Constantly in fear of like, oh my God, if I miss a workout, or oh my God, if like, it felt completely out of my control. Like, okay, I'm in this place, but I could easily like fall back into my old habits and just like completely lose it and whatever. It was exhausting and it took a huge toll on my mental health, and that is actually what the catalyst was for, oh jeez, that hurt. Oh, I have a shoulder injury right now, which is so annoying. I can't lift my shoulder and I'm such an animated speaker. That was the catalyst for going into CBT therapy, which led me to my current OCD therapy. Anyway, one of the things that obviously this was a huge topic in my OCD therapy because a lot of these controls, a lot of these things that I was punishing myself for not doing right, I have very much I guess you would call it perfectionist brain. I never viewed it that way because I don't view myself as doing things perfectly. I thought perfectionists did everything perfectly. It wasn't until the term or the phrase just right came into the conversation that I really was able to connect with that. Things have to be just right. Doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, but for me it has to be just right. It has to be done a certain way, or else end of the world, okay? It wasn't until that conversation that I really understood my OCD. And I would hope that this would connect with a lot of people who don't necessarily have OCD. In fact, I would just like to shout out Caroline Winkler, who recently did a video about just like discomfort. I think it was her, she's talked about her struggle with, what's it called? Anxious attachment, which was a concept that I was unfamiliar with. But I would highly recommend that video because she talks a lot about, like, for instance, if you don't relate to OCD symptoms, she talks about like discomfort, the idea of discomfort, and learning to embrace discomfort as like a self-love kind of action. Anyway, that's really great. I'll link that somewhere up here or down there or whatever. That has been one of the biggest things in my OCD therapy, has been embracing discomfort, looking for the things that cause me discomfort and embracing them, actively seeking them out. And it's been real hard. It's been so hard. It's been so hard. But let's get to specifically how to stop hating yourself, okay? This isn't about OCD. I just wanted you to have that background in case you were new to my channel. A lot of this stems from that for me. The idea of self-love or self-acceptance or rejecting self-judgment, it felt like another language when I was discussing this with my therapist, or when I was it's a big topic in the workbook that I linked down below. It felt like I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Like if someone told me you have to stop judging yourself and you have to be positive, it didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. And I struggled with a lot of that, not believing myself, not believing that not believing that I was even doing things correctly, which is the judgment. The easiest way that I can describe how to go about reducing self-hatred or self-judgment is to simply be aware of it at first. It's like alcoholics or like addicts. They say like the first step is admitting you have a problem. Well, I don't know if that necessarily correlates, but it kind of does. Like the awareness of the judgment. You have to number one, you have to be aware of it. And number two, you have to label it. Like you have to be aware that that is judgment and just label it as such. Don't fight the judgment. You don't want to think like, oh my God, I'm judging myself and I have to think positively. That's going to do the opposite of what you're trying to achieve, because that in and of itself is self-judgment. It is self-hatred. By acknowledging that you're doing something, labeling it as negative, and then saying, oh my God, I shouldn't be doing that thing. I need to be doing something else. That is literally what is going to perpetuate self-judgment and self-hatred. So if this is something that you struggle with, labeling it, acknowledging it is the first step. The way that this worked for me was I would notice that I would have these thoughts pop into my head. Again, like if I ate a certain food that I deemed off limits, if I didn't work out, if I didn't do the dishes, if I had planned to film and didn't because like I felt horrible or something, just anything. If there was something that I felt I should do and didn't do, I would have these thoughts pop into my head that were like, I should have done that. I should have done that. Why didn't I do that? And then that just leads to a much more abstracted feeling about myself as bad. That would pop up like I would just be brushing my teeth. Like these thoughts would pop into my head. My practice was to acknowledge that thought. A thought popped into my head. I had a negative thought. I had a judgmental thought, and that's it. Literally just acknowledging it helped to kind of like stop it at that, you know? Didn't necessarily happen right away. There was a little bit of a battle where like the thoughts were kind of like battling the acknowledgement, where it was like I wanted to continue to ruminate in those thoughts. But the more I practiced it, the less I tried to fight those thoughts, those negative thoughts, the more I just like acknowledged them for what they were slowly. And it felt like I wasn't even doing any work. It felt so easy. Eventually the thoughts would pop up, and it was like, it just became a habit that it was like the thought would pop up. I acknowledged the thought. I was aware of the thought, and then the thought would fade away. Simple as that. If anyone here has practiced mindfulness, if you meditate, I don't know why I say meditate, because there's so many different versions of meditation that aren't necessarily mindfulness, but if you practice mindfulness, this is a huge piece of mindfulness. Being aware, like for instance, if you're trying to meditate, you might think for the first time, I need silence. I need complete silence so that I can be in my thoughts and I can focus on my breath and blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of like the opposite. It's kind of like teaching you that to be able to relax, you need silence. You can't acknowledge the things around you. The best thing to do is anywhere you are to practice a meditation. If there's construction going on outside, if your significant other is on the phone in the other room, and you can hear them speaking, that is the best time. If there's dogs barking outside or a baby crying in the distance, which in my opinion are two of the worst sounds in the world, baby crying and dogs barking, hate that. That's the best time to practice mindfulness, because what you are doing is you are learning to Be comfortable in discomfort, in an uncomfortable situation where you don't have control over what's going on, where you are forced to acknowledge the things that are going on around you as not negative, not positive, but neutral. My main piece of advice is, rather than looking at things as this dichotomy of negative and versus positive, if you are trying to remove self-judgment or self-hatred from your life, it's not going from that to, ooh, I'm so positive, I love myself, I'm so great, I'm doing things amazing. It is acknowledging either of those feelings as just thoughts, and allowing them to pop in, melt away, and proceed. And it really has helped me so much to become very present. And when I say, literally as I was saying, very present, this is still such a work in progress. I have found that I have made so much progress with this OCD therapy, with the exposures that I have been doing, the ERP therapy, with this practice of acknowledging judgment and allowing it to dissipate, rather than fighting it. But it is still very much a process. Like I have those days where things just like crash, where I just have like an OCD storm, an anxiety storm, and I disassociate, and I like am completely removed from my body. This just happened recently when I don't know if I want to tell this story. You can feel like you're making a lot of progress, right? And you're absolutely making progress, but you can't just stop. You can't just like do this that I'm talking about, like start acknowledging your negativity and then allowing it to melt away and then just stop. Or it's like anything. It's like a muscle. You need to work it out, you know? It's not like you can do, 1,000 push-ups and you're just gonna be jacked for the rest of your life. It's not how it works. Unfortunately, I got a problem with that. Gotta keep my shoulder down. For instance, some of the OCD treatment, ERP that I've been doing has been very much around like contamination. And my relationship with contamination is not like, oh, I'm gonna get sick or something like that, like, ooh, germs. It's not like that. It's more of a disgust sort of feeling, where if I feel like my apartment isn't clean, which it absolutely is not right now, like here, I don't know how bad it looks here. Maybe it doesn't look that bad, but to me, it's just like, it's such a mess. Like there's food on these little things that we eat our dinner on sometimes, It is absolutely not clean. It's not clean. If that is like a complete mess, then I start to feel like disgusted, like I can't sit and be comfortable because everything is gross. I had one of these OCD storms a little while ago, and I think I may have spoken to members about this, but it feels like I need to jump out of my body. Like I literally cannot be in my body. Those have been the majority of like the ERP things that we've been doing recently. I wasn't really thinking too much about the anxiety that I feel around certain things having to do with being in public. My therapist brought up very like randomly, I think we were doing another exposure where I was like, it doesn't matter, I don't want to go into it, but we were doing another exposure. And she said, I think we should go outside and go for a walk. And the amount of anxiety that brought me to think about, okay, I haven't done my hair. I didn't have any sunscreen on. I was wearing my pajamas. I was not prepared I didn't know what the weather was outside. I didn't know, it was like 10:30. People are gonna be out and about, walking their dogs and stuff. And I have to have my like therapist on FaceTime. When I tell you the idea that I'm gonna be talking to my therapist about like my feelings outside, having just had like a crying episode in my kitchen, that like affected me so much more than I thought it was going to. I was very much caught off guard, caught by surprise. And it was clearly like what we're going to be working on tomorrow when I have an appointment. The point is that you can get to a place where you have done work and you're feeling a lot better, but you need to continue to push yourself. You need to continue to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, because the truth of it is that is self-care. Self-care is not necessarily like, oh, I'm not gonna go to the thing tonight because I want to stay home and do a sheet mask and watch a movie and eat some popcorn. You know what I mean? I had kind of gotten to a place in my therapy where I was feeling that. I was feeling like, oh, like I'm being gentle on myself, self-care. And that's very much what it was looking like, where I was allowing myself to not do things. And then I started to have this sort of like internal fight over self-care and what it truly is, and accountability. And I'm kind of like in the next stage of that therapy, so I'm working on that currently. But it was within that when I started to recognize that I wasn't really keeping myself accountable. I don't know if I would say getting lazy with it, but I was looking for comfortable places and using some of the terminology that I had learned in this therapy as an excuse to stay in those places. And while I was in those places, I started to feel that self-judgment crop up. Now I continued to practice the awareness of self-judgment and self-hatred, and I was able to recognize that the next step for me was to actively seek out accountability and practice that. And I discussed that with my therapist shortly after, which was great, and it led me to the next step. So that is just another example in and of itself that it isn't one or the other. There is no black and white. It isn't negative versus positive. It isn't, oh, my self-care now is I, set crazy boundaries and I don't do anything that I don't want to do. Nah, that's not what it is. That's not the goal. It shouldn't be the goal, because is that truly going to promote growth in your life and help you to become like a better person? Whatever that means to you, a better person, in my opinion, meaning like having experiences, testing yourself in certain ways, not to the extreme, not to certain extremes. I think that there is such a, with social media and with, I would say a lot of like health and wellness, fitness type people on the internet. It's this idea of, have you guys ever, who's that guy who's like, he's like really intense. Goggins, have you heard of this guy? Goggins, I can't remember. I like just remember hearing his name, but he's like really intense, and he was like overweight or something, and he decided like, I'm gonna go crazy, and like now I like run 30 miles every single day and all this stuff. It's hard for me to believe that he is truly a happy person. And maybe he is, maybe he isn't, maybe he's just built that way that it's like all or nothing, but I really don't think that that should be the goal. And I think that there are a lot of personalities on social media nowadays who are pushing this all or nothing kind of mentality. And that all or nothing mentality really, really made shit so much worse for me. So much worse. I was very much attracted to it. It's kind of like, oh, there's an answer for this. There's like I'm feeling this way, or I'm looking for an answer. It's like, it's so similar to like people joining a cult. You're in a vulnerable place in your life and you're looking for an answer, and it feels like this is the answer. And I'm just here to tell you it's not. Ow. I should really be icing this. It's not the answer. That all or nothing mentality, it really just perpetuates over and over again, from all to nothing, and back to all, and then back to nothing. That's not how I want to live my life. I don't think it's healthy for us mentally. It's similar to the concept of like yo-yo dieting, people who will like lose a ton of weight and then gain a ton of weight. That's like all or nothing, right? Lose a ton of weight, gain a ton of weight. Very bad for you. Very bad for you to constantly be doing that. And that's a physical manifestation of it, but there are mental manifestations of that, of all or nothing, that just take their absolute toll on you emotionally. And you're never going to reach that place of like presence and relaxation and peace, okay? You're never gonna do that. Who's drinking out of the fountain, and it sounds a little bit like somebody's peeing, so apologies. I don't know if you can hear that. I don't know, this mic, you know what I mean? This is a little bit of a ramble. The motivation for me making this video today was I was planning on filming a bunch of videos, and then I started to have these feelings cropping up of my office is an absolute mess. Absolute mess. Can't even can hardly walk in there. Like I need to like move stuff around to even be able to film. You should just see the stuff that I need to move to be able to film. Like in my little section, that room is not big, okay? And then I started to get like, I'm sure that there are people who can like relate to this, where, when like you have plans and then like you decide that you're canceling the plans, or somebody else cancels the plans or whatever, and then you get like so excited, introverts around the world, where you're just like, oh, it's over, I don't have to do it. Like I can just like lay on the couch and do nothing. Sometimes that's a great feeling, okay? And I'm not saying that you should always be avoiding that. I started to get that feeling where I just like decide, oh, also like I was thinking like, oh my God, I can't film because I don't have any nails. Like my nails are all jacked up right now. So many things. I started to get that feeling where I like started to decide in my head, I'm not gonna film today. I'll film tomorrow. And I started to get like that feeling of like excitement where it's like, oh, the nothing, you know? It was like, it felt like it was all. It felt like I had to go all in, like, oh, I have to film like 4 or 5 videos and it's gonna be too much. I'm gonna be like surrounded by chaos, so I'll do nothing instead. Started to feel that. And so I just wanted to take that energy and bring it here because I know so many people can relate to it. And I think I've mentioned this before, but like we are living in a time where more and more people, more and more influencers, celebrities, public figures are sharing this kind of thing on the regular. And so for a little while I was kind of like, I don't really need to do that because like so many people are doing it. So there's a role model out there for someone. But more and more I recognize that like everyone should be doing it so that we can kind of like normalize that we're all just people, you know? Because I think no matter what, the information that you omit from your videos or your photos or your posts, whatever it might be, influencers, public figures, the audience is filling in those gaps. And if you are not posting something talking about like the negative things, not negative things, but the struggles, the things that you struggle with, or I would say the very real aspect of your life, the audience will just assume that it doesn't exist because all they're seeing is the positive. I think that's just how social media and media in general today works. So I figured I would pop in here with my hair clips and my greasy looking hair and my, it's drying now I guess, pajamas with my no nails and my no lighting. The lights are off in this room. What else? What else is, in my opinion, kind of negative? Oh, there's a pee blanket on that ottoman back there because Boo pees in her sleep. Didn't remove that, usually would probably. The trash bag over there, I don't know, I showed you. I thought I would share this to hopefully let you guys know that all of that shit's okay and it's normal and you don't need to be hard on yourself. It's okay when you are, but you should acknowledge it and as simply a thought and move on from it. And I promise you, the more you do that, the more those thoughts will just like pop in and pop out. They might not go away. They probably won't go away. You'll probably have them for the rest of your life. That's okay. Because if you learn to live with them, if you learn to acknowledge it and let it pass and not control you, then you are in control. That's what real control looks like. Is simply being comfortable in your present moment, no matter how uncomfortable it is. That's all I got for you, dude. Whatever, I'm just gonna sign off. I'm just gonna go. Thanks for watching. I need to ice my shoulder and take in a leave. I don't have my glicky thing, so bye.